But we want to begin with the breaking news out of Ottawa this hour. The federal government is confirming an ISIS fighter dubbed Jihadi Jack has been stripped of his UK citizenship, and that puts Ottawa in a potential bind. Jack, whose real name is Jack Letts, is also a Canadian citizen through his father. Now, he was captured by Kurdish forces while trying to enter Turkey in 2017. But with his birth country disavowing him, Ottawa must now assess its role in his case. Well, let's bring in Natasha Fattah as she has the latest on this, because we have just heard from the Canadian government. We reached out to them soon as the story broke. What are we now hearing?
We finally have an official statement from the federal government, this coming from the Ministry of Public Security, from Ralph Goodale's office, and he is saying that the government of Canada is aware that the United Kingdom has revoked Jack Letts' British citizenship. Let's bring up part of the statement as it has been released to CBC News, where the ministry says terrorism knows no borders, so countries need to work together to keep each other safe. Canada is disappointed that the United Kingdom has taken this unilateral action to offload their responsibilities. So some pretty strong words coming from our federal government. But Michael, the statement does go on to say a few other things, so we can remove that statement now. They go on to say that investigating, arresting, charging, and prosecuting any Canadian involved in terrorism or violent extremism is their primary objective. They must be held accountable for their actions. So this person is still a Canadian citizen. They're saying he still needs to be held to account. They say the government is aware that there are other Canadians who are in Syria right now, and that they say they also have no legal obligation to help facilitate those Canadians' return to Canada. They say we will not expose our consular officials to undue risk in this dangerous part of the world, and they say we are not able to comment on specific cases. So that was the official statement, but there was an additional bit of background that they made a point of adding when they released the statement to CBC News. They say the characterization of the Canadian government's reaction to this is false. So you can see it's aggressive, the communication between the UK and Canada. They say, while we are disappointed in the UK decision, we do not conduct tit-for-tat diplomacy. Canada and the UK continue to work closely together on a number of issues, including what's happening in Hong Kong. This and many other issues were discussed during the UK Foreign Secretary Rab's successful visit to Canada earlier in the summer. The impression being that there clearly was some sort of miscommunication, that Canada was perhaps not consulted when the UK moved forward, and if they were consulted, they weren't happy with the ultimate decision made by the British.
Well, that's also an important clarification, because it was the Daily Mail that broke this story, and it was the Daily Mail that was saying that this has created a diplomatic row between London and Ottawa. In fact, that Ottawa may have punished London, saying that they were not necessarily going to go ahead with free trade deal post-Brexit. So really, that's a clarification. But what is also clear here is that we're not talking about just reports. Ottawa is confirming that the UK has revoked his citizenship.
That's right.
So talk to us a bit more about the ties to this country that Jack Letts actually has.
So Jack Letts is a young man. At the age of 16, he converted to Islam. His father, John, is a Canadian citizen. That's how he's a Canadian. But his mother, Sally Lane, is a British citizen, and so that's how he has this dual nationality. That's why for so long it was confusing who would take responsibility, if anybody, for this young man. So as I said, at 16 years of age, he converts to Islam, becomes a hardliner, and by 18, he drops out of school in the UK, decides to go to Syria and become an ISIS fighter. He gets this moniker. He's no longer Jack Letts, he becomes Jihadi Jack. The newspapers are reporting him in that capacity. But then the Kurdish fighters move into the territory where he and his other ISIS members are fighting. They take over, they take captives, and Jack is one of them. He's taken into custody in May of 2017, and then becomes this international issue of who takes responsibility. Do the Canadians move in? Do the British? Or do the Kurds get to decide what's going to happen to this guy? And so in January of 2018, Jack Letts gives an interview where he says he knows he's made mistakes, but he wants to come back to Canada. Let's have a listen to that.
Preferably, I want to come to Canada, but any place other than here is better. Tell my mum I'm sorry. Tell my dad I'm sorry. Tell them if I ever get out of this place, I'm going to try and be a better person.
So that's him in his own words last year in January. Worth noting that in June of this year, both his parents were convicted of funding terrorism because they were sending him money while he was an ISIS fighter in Syria.
So certainly a story getting a lot of attention, not only here in Canada, but also at the UK. Finally, Ottawa's word. So let's keep on this story. But for now, thank you for that, Natasha.
You're welcome.